So we're going to continue in the Bayquniyyah poem. The Bayquniyyah poem. In Mustalah Hadith terminology. And let's go ahead and review from the top, inshallah ta'ala, with a brief review. Maybe catch some details also we still didn't catch from before. And then, inshallah, we'll continue from where we left off. And so the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, he said, Abda'u bilhamdi musalliyan ala. I start with the praise, as one making salat upon Muhammadin khayri nabiyyin ursila, Muhammad, the best prophet sent. وَذِي مِنْ أَقْسَامِ الْحَدِيثِ عِدَّةٌ. And these are some of the divisions of hadith counted. So what's these? Well, these, like you know, refers either to something he has in mind, meaning he started his poem, he had in mind what he wanted to say, and before he wrote it out, he pointed to them in mind. So he said, these, yani, what I have in mind that I'm going to mention for you, or else it refers to something he wrote already, and then he came back and added an introduction. So he said these in reference to something already written. The is a pointing noun. So what's he pointing at? Either something in mind or something that he wrote already, and then he came back and wrote an intro for it. وَذِي مِنْ أَقْسَامِ الْحَدِيثِ عِدَّةٌ. And these are some of the divisions of the hadith counted. How many did he count? 34 kinds. And how many lines does this poem have? 34 lines. وَكُلُّ وَاحِدٍ أَتَى وَحَدَّهُ. And everyone, yani every qism, كُلُّ وَاحِدٍ, every qism, every category, every type of hadith, أتى, came, yani comes in his poem, وَحَدَّهُ, with its definition. Or an example, as you know, because you're now familiar with this poem. Sometimes he gives an example and not exactly a definition. أولها الصحيح, the first kind, yani the first of them, the first kind is the sahih, the authentic or the sound hadith. That's the first kind because that's what the scholars want, an authentic hadith, so we can take it and use it. وَهُوَ مَتَّصَلْ إِسْنَادُهُ, and it is that which its chain was continuous. That's one condition of acceptance. وَلَمْ يَشُذَّ, nor was it irregular or anomalous. That's the second condition, not irregular. أَوْ يُعَلْ, nor was it defective. That's a third condition. يَرْوِيهِ عَدْلٌ, it is narrated by someone trustworthy. That's fourth condition. ضَابِطٌ, accurate. That's a fifth condition. So there's 5 conditions for acceptance. If a hadith has the highest of these conditions, then it's called sahih. And like you know, if it has the lowest of these 5 conditions, then it's called hasan. So sahih and hasan have the same conditions of acceptance in name, not the same conditions of acceptance in level. And the biggest differentiator between sahih and hasan is the dabt, the accuracy. The narrators of the sahih hadith have higher accuracy because they have stronger memories. يَرْوِيهِ عَدْلٌ ضَابِطٌ عَنْ مِثْلِهِ, from his likes. This trustworthy, accurate one narrates it from his likes. Yani, this trustworthy, accurate one, took it from a trustworthy, accurate one. Who took it from a trustworthy, accurate one? Trustworthy, accurate one. And we already said from the beginning, ittasala isnaduhu, and its chain of narration is continuous, like this. All of them are like that. Ittasala isnaduhu, its chain of narration is continuous, and what that means here also is that each one heard it from the one before him. Each one heard it from the one before him. Not has permission from the one before him to narrate, but he heard it from the one before him. Mu'tamadun fi dabtihi wa naqlihi. Each one is mu'tamad, reliable in his accuracy and his documentation. And this reliable one, this mu'tamad, what do the scholars call him? They call him, as I told you before, hujjah. Hujjah. Sometimes a narrator is hujjah. The word hujjah usually means evidence. So the hadith scholars refer to the trustworthy, accurate narrator himself as hujjah. And that's why if a narrator is rejected, they would say about him sometimes, laysa bi hujjah. He's not hujjah. Yani, he's unusable. Not reliable. Wal hasanul ma'arufu turqa. Then the second kind of hadith is the hasan hadith. The hasan hadith is the second kind that the author wants to talk about. Hasan meaning fair. Wal hasanul ma'arufu turqa. The hasan is the one with known pathways. وغدت رجاله لا كالصحيح اشتهرت. And its men became famous, though unlike the fame of the narrators of authentic hadiths. The narrators of the Hasan hadith became famous, but not like the fame of the narrators of the authentic hadith. That's what this line means. وغدت رجاله غدت أي صارت وصارت رجاله اشتهرت. The men of this type of hadith, the narrators of this type of hadith became اشتهرت, famous, لا كالصحيح, but not like the fame of the authentic narrators or the sound narrators. So we are saying some narrators are authentic narrators. For example, Ash-Shafi'i or Malik. Their narrations, yani, a narration, his level is the narrator of a sahih narrator. And some narrators are less than them. So those narrators, they are Hasan narrators. Yani, the scholars in their thoroughness about this issue, they went through this science back and forth and they broke it down into the smallest particles. So they also knew that yani, which men are authentic narrators and which men are Hasan narrators. Meaning they have a big picture of this science here and all of its facets. And here, when he says rijaluhu wa ghadat rijaluhu, what does rijal mean here? Rijaluhu means ruwatuhu, its narrators, male or female. Rijaluhu are its narrators, male or female. So rijal, men, quote unquote men, that's a technical term, like you know already. So the greatest differentiator between the Hasan and Sahih hadiths is the accuracy of the narrator. وَكُلُّ مَا عَنْ رُتْبَةِ الْحُسْنِ قَصُرٍ. And Everything from the rank of fairness that falls short, anything that falls short of the rank of fairness, فهو ضعيف, then it's weak. وهو أقساما كثر, and it is in divisions. It has in divisions multiplied. It has multiplied in divisions. There are so many kinds of weak hadiths for the reasons that you've learned already. If you have a question, you can ask. So that's three kinds he mentioned for us so far. Sahih, Hasan, and Da'if. And then he goes on. وَمَا أُضِيفَ لِلنَّبِي الْمَرْفُوعُ. Anything attributed to the Prophet is marfu', raised or elevated. We're going to call it a prophetic hadith. That's fourth kind. وَمَا لِتَابِعٍ هُوَ الْمَقْطُوعُ. And whatever is attributed to a successor of the companions is called maqtu', severed. That's a fifth kind. And as you know, maqtu' narration from a tabi'i can also be called athar, tradition. And maqtu' is not only for a tabi'i and anyone who comes after. So you have a kind of narration for the Prophet ﷺ, as far as attribution is concerned, and a kind for the Sahaba, and a kind for the successors and onward. Three levels there. So the first three kinds of hadiths that were presented to us here are from the perspective of authenticity and acceptability. Now, the next kinds of hadiths he's mentioning for us refer to the attribution. Is it attributed to the Prophet? Is it attributed to a tabi'i? And as for what's attributed to a sahabi, the author delayed mentioning that until several lines down. When he said down here, وَمَا أَضَفْتَهُ إِلَى الْأَصْحَابِ مِنْ قَوْلٍ وَفِعْلٍ فَهُوَ مَوْقُوفٌ زُكٍ. Whatever you attributed to a companion, whether a saying or an action, then it's mawquf, suspended or halted, yani stopped at the companions, not raised up to the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. So let's count these lines here again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. It wasn't until the 15th line. When did he mention what's attributed to the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam? The 7th line. And what's attributed to a tabi'i? He mentioned that in the 7th line. And then he delayed mentioning what's attributed to a companion all the way down until the 15th line. وَالْمُسْنَدُ الْمُتَّصِلُ الْإِسْنَادِ مِنْ. There should be a hamza here. وَالْمُسْنَدُ الْمُتَّصِلُ الْإِسْنَادِ مِنْ رَوِيهِ حَتَّى الْمُصْطَفَى وَلَمْ يَبِنْ. And a musnad hadith. So that's 6th kind. It is the one with a continuous chain from its narrator back to Al-Mustafa, the selected messenger, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So a musnad is a prophetic hadith with a continuous chain, like we said before several times. Hopefully the repetition is making it stick for you if it hasn't stuck for you yet. وَلَمْ يَبِنْ, and it was not severed. Yani its chain of narration was continuous. وَمَا بِسَمْعِ كُلِّ رَاوٍ يَتَّصِلْ إِسْنَادُهُ لِلْمُصْطَفَى فَالْمُتَّصِلْ. And anything by hearing, its chain is connected. Its chain is connected by hearing. Then, yani, from its narrator, according to the author, back to Al-Mustafa, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, then that's called muttasil, connected. But we said here that when the author said Lil Mustafa about a muttasil hadith, talking here about muttasil hadith, when he said back to Al-Mustafa, that's not a condition to be muttasil. Okay. Rather, the muttasil can refer to a prophetic hadith, and it can refer to a companion's report too, if it has continuous chain. If you just say muttasil with no qualification, don't forget, sometimes you say a word without a qualification, it means something. Without qualification means, like, if you just say, this hadith is connected. You don't say connected to a Shafi'i. When you say to a Shafi'i, that's a qualifier. It limits it. If you leave it open and say, it's muttasil, it's connected, then this means it goes back to the Prophet or it goes back to a companion. If you don't qualify the statement. So just going back to Al-Mustafa only is not a condition. And you can use it for other than the Prophet or a companion if you qualify it, if you qualify the expression. يعني إن قيدته إن قلت المتصل إلى إمام فلان بالقيد بقيدي إلى فلان, with restriction, that's what qualification means, بالقيد. So if you say al-muttasil without qaid, bila qaid, without restriction, without qualification, then it goes back to the Prophet or a companion, this hadith with a continuous chain. And you can say also for other than the Prophet or a companion, this is muttasil, but you need to qayiduhu. You need to put a qualifier on it. You say muttasil back to ash-Shafi'i, muttasil back to fulan, who's not the Prophet or a companion. If you have a question about that, feel free, please. So muttasil, that is the seventh type of hadith the author mentioned for us. He says, musalsalun kul ma ala wasfin ata. Musalsal. So that's eighth, series. Subhanallah. Kul, say about it. You said, is the one who gathers all the hujjah attributes, the five. يعني الحجة من اجتمعت فيه شروط الصحة جميعها. لا. The hujjah is the person himself. The thing that has all these five conditions is the hadith, the report, rather. The report would have these five conditions of acceptance instead of shurutul sihha, say shurutul qabul. The report would have those five conditions of acceptance. If they are the highest levels, of those five, then it's sahih. And yes, it will be hujjah. Yeah, the report would be hujjah then. It would be evidence. That's true. You say, how do we call them a person? How do we call them the person hujjah? Because in reference to his being reliable, he's mu'tamad, you can take from him. So they called him hujjah. For example, here's easy example. Ash-Shafi'i said to you, Ya Bilal, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كذا. Then you're going to take it. You're going to say, على الرأس شيخ. So he's hujjah. He is the hujjah. He is. So this means that, for example, if some hadith scholars were talking about a narrator, one of them might say to another, is he hujjah? Is fulan hujjah? This means, is he reliable? Is he mu'tamad? Oh, how do we, if he's adlun dabit, he's going to be hujjah if he's adlun dabit, if he's trustworthy and accurate. And exactly. Musalsal, a series. قل ما على وصف أتى. Say about it. It is a narration that came with a particular description. So that's vague, though. A vagueness that's a result of the poet being limited to the meter. So if he were writing in nathr, which is prose, that means just regular writing, then he wouldn't be restricted to a number of syllables, and he could just say out what he needs to say out. Qul, say about it. Ma ala wasfin ata. It's something that came in a particular description. So that's so vague. But that's what he said because of his constraints in the poetry. Mithlu, like, ama wallahi ambani al-fata. For every narrator in the chain to say, by God, the young man told me. Kadaka qad haddathanihi qa'ima. Or for every narrator to say, also, he told me standing. أو بعد أن حدثني أو بعد أن حدثني تبسم. Or for every narrator to say, after he told me, he smiled. So that's the series in the chain, every narrator doing the same thing. So if you know how things go, you know all of these have vast details behind them. So what are we doing right now? Just being acquainted only. Learning their names, learning their definitions or examples, just to give us a tasawwur, just to give us a conception. And then after this, inshallah, we'll go to the next step to increase our comprehension and knowledge in this field. Bi-idhnillah. Aziz. Now, the ninth kind is the Aziz. Aziz means rare, or it means supported. Marwi ithnayni aw thalatha. It's the narration of two. That's true. If you stop there, there's no problem here. But he didn't stop there. He said, oh, thalatha, or three. Or three. Okay, if he means not less than two. If he means Aziz is a narration of not less than two, and that's why he said two or three, then it's still true. But if he means a narration of three can be Aziz, if it's three at every level, yani more than two at every level, it's Aziz, then that's not the famous usage of this term. That's how a beginner is going to get confused studying Al-Bayquniyyah, studying Al-Bayquniyyah in the beginning. So know that this word here is fihi nazar. It requires some checking. Mashhur. Then the 10th kind he told us is the mashhur, famous or popular. Marwi fawqa ma thalatha. It's the narration of more than three, according to the author. And that is disputable because more than three is four. More than three starts at four. And a mashhur hadith starts at three. So to say above three is not the famous usage of this term. So if a report is Aziz, that means there's at least two reporters from the Prophet, and at least two reporters from the Sahaba, and at least two reporters from the Tabi'un, etc. If a report is mashhur, famous or popular, then that means there's at least three reporters from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and at least three reporters from the Sahaba, and at least three reporters from the Tabi'un, etc. Not more than three to be mashhur. That's not a condition. So now we're looking at the report from the perspective of how many routes it comes from. And what did he tell us here? What has at least two reporters? And what has at least three reporters? What about what has a single lone reporter? He delayed mentioning that until the 16th line. Here we are on the 12th line, talking about here on this 12th line, talking about the numbers of reporters. And then he finished that issue on the 16th line. قل غريب ما روى راو فقط. Say a ghareeb hadith is what only a single narrator narrated. Then he said, معنعن كعن سعيد عن كرم. The mu'an'an report, this is the 11th one, the 11th type, is like when it says in the chain, when there's a series of the word an in the chain. And so it's saying an Sa'id, an means from. An Sa'id, from Sa'id. An Karam, from Karam. An Fulan, an Fulan, an Fulan. From so-and-so, from so-and-so, from so-and-so. And we talked about that, whether that's a connected chain or not. And we talked about the issue of the tricksters and how they use this type of wording. And we talked about the difference between Al-Bukhari and Muslim in this issue. Yes. So when you say from Fulan, that by itself doesn't necessarily mean I heard from Fulan. That's how someone uses these types of words to be tricky. Oh, from Fulan. وَمُبْهَمٌ مَا فِيهِ رَاوٍ لَمْ يُسَمْ. The 12th kind the author told us about is the mubham. Mubham being the one that has unnamed narrator. That's what he said. وَمُبْهَم, vague, ambiguous, is مَا فِيهِ رَاوٍ لَمْ يُسَمْ. It's the report that has an unnamed narrator or an unidentified narrator in the chain. Not an unidentified person in the story. No. That is a kind of mubham, but that's not the one here. An identified one in the story is not harmful to the hadith. Like to say, a man came to the Prophet, a woman came to the Prophet. An unidentified one in the chain is harmful. Because who is he? Is he hujjah? Is he mu'tamad? وَكُلُّ مَا قَلَّتْ رِجَالُهُ عَلَى. And anything that has fewer narrators, fewer men, meaning fewer narrators, ala, it has ascended. So that's the 13th kind. وَضِدُّهُ ذَاكَ الَّذِي قَدْ نَزَلَ. And the opposite of that, which is a report that has many narrators in it, that's the one that has descended. That's 14th kind. As you know, being high or low does not mean authentic or inauthentic and does not mean good or bad. Although low chain is ideal. Low chain means few narrators. That is ideal, but does not guarantee a superior narration. وَمَا أَضَفْتَهُ إِلَى الْأَصْحَابِ مِنْ. And anything you attributed to the companions. مِنْ قَوْلٍ وَفِعْلٍ. Whether, min here means whether a saying or an action. فَهُوَ مَوْقُوف. Then it's mawquf, paused, halted, stopped at a companion. Zukin, and that's known. So this is the 15th kind that the author mentioned for us. وَمُرْسَلٌ مِّنْهُ الصَّحَابِيُّ سَقَطُ. And he says, a mursal hadith is the one in which the companion dropped from the chain or fell from the chain. That's how he defined it. And we talked about the nuance of this definition or this kind of hadith, and that really a mursal hadith, instead of saying it's a hadith with a missing companion, it should be called a hadith in which a tabi'i attributed the hadith to the Prophet directly without mention of his intermediary. So we talked about that. And I told you a Shafi'i doesn't accept this kind of hadith. And I told you why. And I did not tell you that Malik and Abu Hanifa, they might accept the mursal hadith. One in which a tabi'i does not mention who he heard the hadith from, and we know he never met the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, so there is at least one person between him and the Prophet. And there could be up to 6 people between him and the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, according to the norm that has been tracked about the tabi'un and how they used to learn from each other. Ash-Shafi'i doesn't accept such a report, but Abu Hanifa and Malik might, not that they definitely always do, but they might. Yani, Malik and Abu Hanifa did not rule out Mursal report altogether, but Shafi'i rules it out, doesn't use it. And that's going to make his madhab strong, though. That strictness is going to make his madhab strong. But their acceptance of this kind of hadith, they have evidence for it. Just because Shafi'i does not use it doesn't mean they don't have any point. And it doesn't mean that what they say is weak. That's as far as we got last time. And we're ready to continue from line 16 onward. Do you have any question for me before we continue?
Shaykh, did we ask the question?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
I was just intrigued to know about what you mentioned about Shafi'i not accepting the Mursal Hadith.
Yes.
So you said, ergo, his madhab is said to be stronger, right?
I'm not saying, what I am saying is, that's general broad statement that he's going to have a stronger madhab from this perspective. I'm not saying everything in his madhab is stronger than anything in anybody else's madhab. I
got, generally speaking, I mean, but isn't in that case, would he be opening the space, so to speak, to ijtihad more than relying on the hadith? To ijtihad of the mujtahid more than relying on some mursal hadith. This is what just came to my mind. You know what I mean, right?
Yeah, I think I understand your question. Well, I don't know if I have the knowledge to answer that question.
Yeah.
MashaAllah. No.
Barakallah feek.
Ameen wa feek.
Yeah, I meant open the door. Yeah, that's the word. Anyways, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Although Ash-Shafi'i, he's counted amongst Ahlul Hadith, and Abu Hanifa, he's counted amongst Ahlul Ra'i. What's that? Ahlul Hadith and Ahlul Ra'i. This is 2 styles of ijtihad. And it is said to be a name that refers to the prowess displayed by these 2 groups. So what does that mean? Means it would be said that the people of Hadith, the ones who are called Ahlul Hadith, that they would not be as quick to resort to ijtihad as other mujtahids. They are more likely to use some hadiths for their rules before they resort to ijtihad. For example, Imam Ahmed sees that a weak hadith is still stronger than a man's opinion. So he could use a hadith before resorting to an ijtihad, even if this hadith has weakness in it. Whereas Abu Hanifa in this same field here would make ijtihad before relying on a weak hadith. That's how some people would explain the difference, or just to give you an idea. I'm sure it's not limited to that. Just to give you an idea of the difference between the people of hadith and the people of ra'i, opinion. But mashallah, I found in my notes that I took from Sheikh Samir that the difference between the people of hadith and the people of opinion, the mujtahids, it's two groups of mujtahids here, is actually that the people of hadith were famous for their prowess in hadith. They got this name for their prowess. That means their talent and strength and proficiency in the science of hadith. So they were called Ahlul Hadith. And the people of Ra'i, Ahlul Ra'i, those are the Hanafis, they were called such because of their prowess in fiqh. But doesn't deny that the others had prowess in fiqh. And this doesn't deny that the Hanafis had prowess in hadith. So the synopsis of all what I just said to you right now is that there's two groups of mujtahids. Ahlul Hadith and Ahlul Ra'i. The people of hadith and the people of opinion. That's just a name, though. Doesn't mean they use their... You can, if you know how things go, there's people who would just dispraise them for this name. Say, no, those are people of opinion. Doesn't mean they're just opinionated. This doesn't mean the opinionated ones. This means, the Ahlul Ra'i here means the powerful jurists, the top-notch jurists with great prowess. Okay. And what led me to talk about that right now was your question about using the hadith. You were following up from something that I said. So now moving on to the next kind of hadith, which is the 17th kind the author is mentioning for us. He says, وَقُلْ غَرِيبٌ مَا رَوَى رَاوٍ فَقَطُ. And say, the ghareeb hadith, let's say peculiar, the peculiar hadith, ghareeb could mean strange or it could mean loner. Someone who's alone, he's a ghareeb. Or he's a stranger, he's a ghareeb. So I'm saying peculiar. Qul ghareebun, say the ghareeb, the peculiar hadith is ma rawa rawin faqat. What a single narrator only narrated. What a single narrator narrated only. Does this mean it's weak? No. Doesn't mean it's weak. So then, there's another benefit here. Let me mention for you before it escapes me, because it did escape me before. I wanted to mention to you. So Ghareeb was narrated by a single narrator. Does this mean it's weak? No, it doesn't mean it's weak. Could be authentic? Absolutely. Could be very strong, authentic hadith. The meaning here is one person narrated it from the Prophet, and one person narrated it from the companion, and one person narrated it from the tabi'in. Could such a report be authentic and strong? Absolutely. So it doesn't have to be weak because it came through one. Let's go back up to line 12 here. Aziz. The Aziz report. The Aziz report is the narration of two, at least two. Does that then make it authentic? No, it's not going to be authentic because it came through two. Don't be like the people who thinks that the more people you hear something from, the truer it is. No. Learning this hadith science is going to teach you better than that. Rather, learning this hadith science is going to make you more aware of the nature of rumors in the first place. The rumors get spread and they get said by many people. Subhanallah, just listening to YouTube or other things like Instagram, for example, or other social media sites. If you hear some of the people when they talk about different things, maybe they're talking about politics, maybe they're talking about celebrities, for example, then what do they say? They say, like, you know how we as Muslims, we would say, oh, I heard the rule is like this. I heard the rule is like that. Okay. Well, at least we have teachers and things like that. These people, they say, yeah, I heard he lost all his money. I have no idea. They don't know the person they're talking about. They never met him personally. And they, yani, who they heard, they don't know who they did hear from. They don't even know who he is. It's just something they heard in some of the different videos they've been watching. And then they just say it like, I heard. All the outlets are saying. And look at how also what people call legacy media or corporate media has lost its reliability to the people. Now it's like they're rumor peddlers, competitors of rumors. But people don't trust what they say. So just because it came through two narrators, I'm still on line 12 here. Just because it came from two narrators does not mean it's authentic. That's not a condition. And that's not a condition to be authentic. Could come from one narrator and be authentic. SubhanAllah. I told you, gave you example about a squirrel, a clip or a reel that I saw on YouTube or Instagram about a story of a squirrel that was rescued and nursed back to health. That's the story. And this story is supported by a series of visual clips. So you're seeing videos about a squirrel as if it's the same squirrel, but is it really? And not just that, many things. Some of them, when you look at some of those stories, they actually have obviously different, or the clips are obviously from different sources. Same story though, one story with different clips. And what you need to know, brothers and sisters, that these fabrications are on purpose. Obviously, somebody actually took the time to draft a lie, a fabrication, and to cobble together footage to support a fabrication and then feed it out to the people. And don't forget that in the society we live in today, that the people have motivation for such fabrication. What's that motivation? The least of it is getting views. The very least is getting views to see their view count rise. And the strongest of that is making money. We're amongst the strongest because of advertising. So if they can fabricate some story that's interesting and generates lots of clicks, then they can get lots of advertising revenue. So they're just lying on purpose. That took me away from this topic of hadiths here, but I wanted to remind you about this. Be on alert from what you see on social media in terms of news, what you hear from social media and even the news. Legacy media, also called corporate media, and independent media, those guys are taking from each other too. It's interesting. You know how we have Bukhari, Muslim, reliable sources for information? Yeah, they have amongst themselves what they deem reliable sources. So according to them, they would say, no, CBS News is reporting it, NBC is reporting it, CNN, did I say, CNN's reporting it, and what's that one? I forgot the radio one, the one on the radio. What's that radio news show? Anyway, yeah, and in different fields, people have like that. Take, for example, the people who deal with celebrity gossip. So they have like outlets that they rely on.
KYW radio.
No, not KYW. NPR is what I meant. I meant NPR. They say NPR is reporting it. Yeah. So be aware of these things. Yeah, be skeptical about a lot of the information that you hear on these outlets. Employee. So now we just covered up to line 16. We only got one new hadith type in today. Next time, inshallah, we won't review from the top. We'll just start fresh so we can get more new hadiths. But we'll review from the top again another time. And I hope this repetition is very useful for you. Do you have any question? We'll stop here. Also, what do they have out there? These, they have those crime shows like what they call forensic shows. So they have false tales on there. Like they just presented, like what they do is like they have real crimes that they're just enacting, and they get actors and stuff, and they make footage. Yeah, forensic files, that type of stuff. Maybe they have some true stories in there, maybe, but for sure they have fabrications in there. Those guys are hiring like mystery writers and people who write mysteries, people who write like novels and things. That's where they're getting these things from. And even a lot of forensics, by the way, that in itself is very faulty. So you said, what's the judgment on DNA testing? Invalid. Good question. Invalid. I'll tell you something that's even stronger than DNA testing that's invalid. The baby came out looking like your neighbor. That's invalid. You can't say that's not my baby. Baby came out spitting image of your neighbor. You cannot say it's not my baby. So if that's the case, how about DNA testing? It's not valid. SubhanAllah. There's hadith about that you cannot use the child's appearance to confirm or deny his lineage. The Prophet did that in an instance. He did use the child's appearance in an instance because he got revelation about it. And he informed in that instance that this is not usable, this is not useful way, and that he's only using it because he got revelation about it. Said al-irqu dassas. Very interesting. That means like the vein is deceptive, for example, something like that. Means you cannot use.
No, Shaykhi, it's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which was asserting what you were saying when that Sahabi came to him. I think I believe you heard about it many times. When that Sahabi came to him and asked him about his son, he was black and he's white and his wife is white, and his son, like they had a black child. And
yes,
remember that's
yes.
Then the Prophet
Okay.
said, Al-Irqu Dassas, that he might have got it from one of his grandchildren, grandfathers, or
Uh-huh.
mothers.
I never heard this version, this wording in that hadith. Barakallahu feek.
Yeah. Shaykhi, what were you saying about just now? I didn't catch up. You said the Prophet in the instant or instantly he received revelation. Can you?
There was an instance in which the Prophet ﷺ used a child's appearance to prove something. Yani, to prove whether the woman was committed infidelity. But he informed that he is doing so in this instance by revelation, and that this is not a reliable way.
Okay, I got you. I never heard of that. MashaAllah.
Yeah, that's a hadith when the man came and accused his wife.
Subhanallah.
Yeah, and then it wouldn't have been accepted from him, but Allah gave the Prophet the revelation, alayhi salatu wassalam.
Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Shaykhi, I had a question about the hadith. You said, Aziz, you were stressing out that two are narrating, two Sahabas are narrating from the route of the Prophet, and two Tabi'is are narrating, right?
At least.
At least. What about the ones that come after? Aren't they considered aren't they taking into consideration the 2 2 2 2? Does it go like for the whole chain, or does it apply to the whole chain? Or
okay, so I think we'll answer your question here is that this is why we have to say at least, because it could be that at any level there is more than two.
Okay. And what about Ghareeb? Yeah. All this applies for all, right? Mashhur, and so at least three in the.
Yes, at least three. Can't go under. So if there were at some level only two narrators, then it's not mashhur hadith.
Okay.
If there were at some level only one narrator, then it's not aziz hadith.
It's Ghareeb, right?
Yeah, then it's going to be Ghareeb hadith. It's going to be Ghareeb hadith. Yeah, but it's you could then though say aziz or mashhur with qaid, with restriction. You can say it's mashhur from fulan. Like at this point, that's when it started being mashhur, for example.
Okay. Is it true that in the past I used to watch a channel and they would say, they were airing, they were mentioning hadith about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like what they call Sunnah Nabawiyya or whatever. They would say Aziz Ghareeb. Does it like could it be like that? Aziz Ghareeb, or am I?
Oh, a hadith being Aziz on Ghareeb?
Yeah.
I don't recall learning something like this.
Okay, maybe I'm mistaken. Then we would say Azizun Sahih or Ghareebun Sahih.
Yeah, for example, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Subhanallah.
Yeah, they would say, for example, Hasanun Ghareeb, for example.
Hasanun Ghareeb, yeah. I don't know, for some reason, maybe I'm mistaken. But so at least three to rank it or to classify it as mashhur. Right?
Yes.
At any level of
yes.
Okay. And the same goes for all, like 2, 1.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
At least two narrators for Aziz at every level.
Yeah, at every level. Yeah, that's what I meant. Jazakallah khairan kathiran.
Ameen wa iyaakum. And when we say mashhur, is at least three. If you want, without reaching the level of tawatur, just so you can cap it off.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
So Ghareeb is a narration of a lone individual. Aziz is narration of at least two. Mashhur is narration of at least three without reaching the level of tawatur. And then above that is tawatur.
Yes, definitely. أحبك الله بارك الله فيك.
آمين وفيك. ما شاء الله. سبحان الله وبحمده. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.